everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today, I'm joined by Rich Ashton, serial entrepreneur and author with decades of experience building businesses, navigating failure, and mastering long term success. Rich, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'll enjoy being here.
All right. So, can you tell us who is rich beyond, the entrepreneur title?
Who am I? I'm uh, I'm a father, grandfather, a man who appreciates and enjoys life. I've had a wonderful career. I chose to be in small business as opposed to big business. It worked out very well for me, and I attribute much of my success to the fact that I learned how to empower employees along the way. So with a younger audience today, I guess I'd love for the message to be you can enjoy your career and you can find people who are interested in investing in you.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that one, actually. So, I like to ask, what pulled you into, entrepreneurship?
Wh- For some reason, I'm not exactly sure I know why. I knew at an early age that I really was going to run my own business one day. I actually began my career in a large company, which was very entrepreneurial. And so that kind of fed my interest in entrepreneurship. It gave me a great foundation in some of the things that I used in the rest of my career. But I just, once I got into small business, knowing that I could impact people and knowing I could make decisions in the morning that would pay dividends in the afternoon, I just had a wonderful time in small business.
Okay, wow. So, talking about your business, or small business rather, what was your very first business venture and what did it teach you, actually?
I had been in the real estate development business with the large company. And so the very first thing I did when I left them was to do a little bit more real estate development on my own, built some small commercial buildings, invested in a construction company, started a rental company from scratch. And then in 1988, so 38 years ago, I purchased a nearly bankrupt HVAC company, heating, air conditioning, and plumbing. And I still own that company today, despite the fact that I'm retired and now serving a chairman's role. So I've had, all told, I've owned 8 companies across different industries, but I fell in love with the HVAC business because it involves a lot of customer service and involves a lot of motivating employees and uh, tradespeople are just some of the greatest people in the world. They're just down to earth. They love to do things well, and so it's been a really enjoyable run in the HVAC business.
Wow. When you talk about these businesses, it seems like you make it feel simple, right? You make it feel easy. So do you think running a business is actually an easy thing to do?
No, I must be giving you the wrong impression. It's
Mm,
easier for some than others, but being an entrepreneur involves taking risk and knowing. I have met several people who thought they wanted to own businesses. Once they understood the accountability and the pressure that goes along with not just supporting yourself, but running a business that supports, 50 other families.
yeah.
That's a lot of pressure, and if you're not wired that way, it's suffocating and it's no fun. For me, it just was one of those things that I just felt like it was a perfect fit for my personality.
Wow. So basically, you had the perfect personality to build a good business, right?
Well,
Okay.
I was in it so long, I had a chance to. I don't know if I ever perfected it, but I sure got better at it over the years.
Okay, wow. I don't know if I could say this, but I feel like you perfected it already, right?
Yeah. If you say so, but I'm not sure I'm going to claim that.
Okay. All right. So, in businesses there are failures, right? So,
Correct.
what was the biggest failure you experienced in business?
Uh, I actually purchased a company about, I don't know, 15 years ago. that I thought was a great fit for our HVAC company. And I ultimately had to shut it down after about
Hmm.
a year and a half. I just could not make it work. It cost me a lot of money personally. And I hated the failure, just the idea of failure more than anything else.
Mhm.
I actually, in the HVAC business, I mentioned that it was nearly bankrupt when I bought it. It was almost the biggest failure. I got right to the edge of failure and was able to succeed beyond that. But that was the scariest time of my life, and I didn't enjoy it at the time. I look back at it. It's one of the reasons I can look back with such pride now is because we survived that. But the one that I had to shut down was a total failure.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. Said you had to shut down. I don't know if you could tell us, like, what were the reasons why you had to shut this business down?
We couldn't make it make money. I thought
Hmm.
it was a perfect fit. It was a parts supplier, which we buy parts in the HVAC business, and it should have worked. I did a very poor job of analyzing the company before I bought it, and it was not a fit. We couldn't make it a fit, and we just couldn't find a way to market the company successfully. So ultimately, I said I had lost enough money and decided I wasn't going to lose any more.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So, what do you think most people actually misunderstand about entrepreneurship?
I think it looks more fun from the outside for the average person than it
Mm,
is. As I said earlier, there are people that can't handle the pressure of supporting a number of people. There are also people who can't handle the pressure of going into debt. I was introduced to debt in the real estate business at a much higher level than I ever have had to experience later. And I just got comfortable with the idea that it's okay to be in debt. It's okay, you have to be responsible about it. But I had attempted to bring some people into the business that I thought ultimately would be able to run it. But they had to assume some of the debt, just sign their name on the dotted line, and that shut them down. I was surprised by that, but it was a little bit of debt that they needed to assume, and they were so uncomfortable with it. I pulled back on bringing them into the business and just said we won't do that.
mm,
That was educational for me because I
mm.
didn't realize that people were that sensitive to small amounts of debt.
Wow. With what you said, I don't know, but assuming a debt, I don't think that's an easy thing to do, right? Because I feel like I kind of understand where they came from. They wouldn't want to, take on someone else's debt. But at the same time, I feel that if they had seen the vision you had, it would have been a very small thing for them to actually just assume that debt and, work on it and stuff like that. So yeah, I
I
understand.
assumed the same thing because they had both worked with me for quite a while,
Um,
and I was wrong. They were fine on parts of the vision. They weren't fine on that part of the vision.
All right, so okay, I understand that. Yeah, so I was going to ask, what separates long-term entrepreneurs from, short-term hustlers?
I think that's a good question. I think that the main answer is getting a definition of why you're in business. There's a terrific business book called Start with Why by a famous author named Simon Sinek. And Start with Why, just ask the basic question, why are you in business? Why do you do this? And it allows you when you go through that exercise in your company, and we did in ours after having a pretty clear vision of where we wanted to be, that book it helped us condense our vision into a single statement, which for us was providing exceptional customer service through support and empowerment of our employees.
Mm,
When you have a clear vision of where you're going, then every decision you make, it runs through the filter of that vision. So in our case, if I'll use AI as an example, we use AI in the company, But we looked at using AI to interact with our customers and decided that if we're going to provide exceptional customer service, that AI was cost efficient, but it wasn't an improvement on having
Mm,
people interact with people. Now, there may come a day where AI is ready to do that. In our opinion, it isn't ready right now. So we rejected that. Similarly, if there's an opportunity to bring in something that impacts our employees, the question is, does it support and empower our employees, and will it
mm,
help them provide even better customer service? If the answer is yes, we'll make the change. If the answer is no, we reject that change. So having that clear vision of who you are and where you're going is, I think, the key to succeeding long term.
wow. Okay. So what habits consistently, predict business success, basically?
Well, I think having clear values, I think empowering your employees is a really important part.
Mm,
I decided that I didn't want to sell the company because I didn't feel like a private equity group would come in and run the company the same way that it was run now and would treat
mm,
our employees well and our customers well. So I decided that I was going to build a leadership team capable of taking over the company and allowing me to retire, and I wanted to build it from within the company. So we began that process. I didn't get it right the first time, but
mm,
as I got into the program, I was able to take people who didn't really see themselves as leaders, particularly not leaders capable of running a company, and we built them piece by piece into the
mm,
leaders that now run our company. And that means that my 38 years was invested to allow them to have another
mm,
38
mm.
years
Yeah.
of continued success. They understand the core values of the company, they're willing to carry them on. And I think that's a real differentiator for a business like ours.
Okay. Wow. All right. I was going to like when you were saying some things, you said you had to train some people. About training these people, was there a particular time where there were some people you trained that you had to let them go or something because they did not fit that standard of what you wanted?
Yeah, another good question. We started with 8 in our training program. We wound up with 5 people. Um, uh, One just simply didn't have an interest in being a leader when he
Mm,
was confronted with it. One just wasn't able to adopt the principles, and another decided that she just wasn't a good fit long term for what we were doing. So, but
mm,
I mean, 5 out of 8 in a
mm,
in a leadership training program is not a bad percentage. We um, we started the program by saying, What's the, why are you not a leader now? What has kept you from becoming a leader? And once you find out what ceiling people have, and we all have them, I've got ceilings, and everybody does. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe it is
mm,
that they were not raised around leaders and never saw themselves as a leader. In a blue collar company like ours, it's not uncommon to have people be extremely good at their specific job, but never see themselves as a leader, so they don't pay attention to keys
mm,
about being a leader. We dealt with each individual about their particular ceilings and then worked at raising their ceiling. And
mm,
it worked very, very well. It's not something you do in a weekend. It's not a short
mm,
course. It took us 3 years to go
mm.
through but in the end, it was very successful.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, another important question is what what belief had the biggest positive impact in your life actually?
Well, my Christian faith is a huge impact. So I would say that that's probably number one. The integrity that I was raised with and then was reinforced in my first company,
Mm,
um, that's something, everything I've done has been done with integrity. And I just think that that's really important. But because I was raised that way, that wasn't a transition. That was something that I had at my core. And I have insisted that every company that I have owned, um, go to market with integrity. We treat people with integrity. We treat customers with integrity. We're kind of honest to a fault. And so I think in my experience, integrity was maybe the core of everything that we did.
Wow. All right. So I know you've said a whole lot of things that I learned from, and I hope my listeners will learn from as well. But I still feel like you have a lot more to offer, right?
Well, I
So
hope
what
so.
advice do you have for people, who are looking to go into businesses, or those who already have a business but they wanted to, grow? What advice do you have for them?
I wrote a book as a result of the training program, and I'm going to mention that because it's fundamental. You can be a business owner, you can be an entrepreneur, you can be a new employee, and if you don't have the foundations of leadership, you're not going to be as successful as you ultimately could be. And
Mm,
that was the reason that I ultimately published the book, Growing Your Own, because it's a very simple desktop reference for leaders at all levels. I really wrote it for entry level leaders, and I have since found that it resonates with experienced leaders as well. And it's
mm,
2.5 page chapters. It's very simple, no theory, no jargon, no buzzwords. It's just down to earth advice that everybody can use. My youngest son, when he was halfway through the book, called me and said, "Dad, this is about life. This isn't just about business." And I would have to agree with him. So although it's self-serving to plug my book in that way, I really think getting a grounding in leadership principles is one of the most important investments that young people can make.
mm. Okay, wow. Thank you so much for that insight, actually.
I think she just switched me to host, and I wasn't prepared to host this. Are you back? Oh, are you back? No, I can't. There's no sound. There's no sound.
Okay, so
There
can you
you
hear
go.
me now?
I can now. Yep.
Okay, so I apologize for that actually. That was a mistake. Yeah, I was going to ask you what do you define success as?
For me personally, quite by accident, I realized about 3 years ago that I was at a position of peace in my life, and I never associated that word with me. My life has been hectic and busy and crowded, and so I just didn't think people like me could reach a position of peace.
Hmm,
Both through my faith, some success. I have a terrific family that is nearby, and uh, I have friends. It's just really easy to wake up in the morning and look forward to my day because I am at peace. And I would say that I don't know a better definition of success than to be able to say that about yourself.
wow. Coming from, that's I would say I wasn't expecting you to define that as success, right? But then again, peace is very important in, everyone's life. So yeah, I do appreciate that. Okay,
Well,
before I
like
round
I said, that was not something I was seeking. I was out on
up,
a walk one day and I just said, my gosh, I am totally at peace with my life right now. And it's a great feeling. Still a great
yeah.
feeling.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think I got that one. I took that one and I'm going to actually put it in my life. Okay, so yeah, before I end this section, I'd like to ask you, where can listeners get to know more about you, what you do, and your book also?
I can be reached by email, and I love to communicate directly with people. Rich@growingyourown.net. The website for the book and the training course is growingyourown.net.
Wow, growing your own net. I'm definitely visiting the website, by the way. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and insights with us. I do appreciate that. And I hope we could do this some other time, actually.
I'd love to visit with you again. It's been very fun.
All right, so thank you. So thanks for tuning into Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this. And also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes.